Arthur Vance sat in the dark, the blue light of the computer monitor reflecting in his angry eyes. He clicked play on the hidden camera file, expecting to see a thief. Instead, a terrified whisper filled the room, a voice that froze the millionaire in his chair. "Please don't tell my dad," the 10-year-old boy on the screen begged, tears streaming down his face. "He promised we wouldn't be homeless anymore." Arthur's hand trembled on the mouse. He had set this trap to catch a criminal. He wanted to prove that his new groundskeeper was exploiting him. But as he watched the footage, the anger in Arthur's chest didn't explode. It evaporated. He wasn't watching a crime. He was watching a child trying to survive in a house that had forgotten how to love. Arthur stared at the screen, a cold knot of confusion and shock tightening in his stomach. If you believe that kindness is free, hit that like button right now. Let's prove that compassion still matters. To understand why a man like Arthur Vance was sitting in the dark waiting to destroy a little boy, you have to understand the silence. Arthur lived in a sprawling estate in the hills of Seattle. 6 bedrooms, a heated pool, and a view that cost millions. But it was dead. Since his wife Eleanor passed away 3 years ago, Arthur had become a ghost in his own home. He was a millionaire father who had provided everything for his own children, yet they never called. They sent assistants to buy his birthday gifts. Arthur told himself he didn't care. "People are messy," he would say. "Business is clean." That was exactly how he viewed Sam. Sam was his new live-in groundskeeper, a man in his 30s with rough hands, a rusted-out van, and a look of desperate exhaustion etched into his face. Sam had taken the job for 30% less than the market rate, for one reason only: the small guest cottage out back. "I'm a single dad, Mr. Vance," Sam had said, pleading for the job. "I just need a safe place for my son, Toby. I promise you won't even know we're here." Arthur had agreed, but he was suspicious. Wealth does that to a man. It makes you think everyone wants something from you. And Arthur was convinced that Sam and his quiet, skinny 10-year-old son were taking advantage of him. It started with small things. Objects in Arthur's private study, his sanctuary, seemed moved. The photograph of his late wife was angled differently. The rug seemed disturbed. "They think I'm just a senile old man," Arthur fumed one evening, pouring himself a scotch. "The dad distracts me with yard work, and the kid sneaks in to steal." Arthur didn't confront them. He was a businessman. He wanted proof. He bought a high-definition hidden camera disguised as a hard drive and placed it on the bookshelf in his study, pointing right at his desk. He waited 3 days. Then, the notification came. "Motion detected. Study. 10:14 a.m. Arthur sat at his computer, his heart pounding with vindication. "Got you," he muttered. He clicked the file. On the screen, the heavy oak door creaked open. Toby slipped inside. The boy looked terrified, moving on tiptoes. He was wearing an oversized hoodie that had clearly seen better days. Arthur leaned forward, waiting for the boy to open the safe or check the drawers for cash. But Toby didn't go to the safe. He went to his pocket and pulled out half a sandwich wrapped in a napkin. "Here, Buster," the boy whispered. Arthur blinked. From under the desk, Arthur's old, blind golden retriever crawled out. The dog, who usually slept all day in depression, was wagging his tail. "I saved you the soft parts," Toby whispered, feeding the dog. "I know your teeth hurt." Arthur stared. He hadn't petted that dog in 3 years. It reminded him too much of his wife. But here was this strange child, sharing his meager lunch with an animal Arthur had neglected. Then, Toby stood up and walked over to the silver picture frame on the desk. The photo of Arthur's wife. He's going to steal the silver, Arthur thought, his cynicism flaring up. But Toby didn't take it. He pulled a sleeve over his hand and gently dusted the glass. He looked at the woman in the photo, and then he looked at the empty leather chair where Arthur sat every night. "You have to help him, Mrs. Vance," Toby whispered to the picture. Arthur's hand froze on his glass. "My dad says Mr. Vance is very lonely," Toby continued, his voice soft and sad. "He says Mr. Vance doesn't like people anymore because his heart hurts. That's why we have to be invisible." Toby looked down at his worn-out sneakers. "Dad says if we make one mistake, just one tiny problem, Mr. Vance will send us away, and we'll lose the house." Arthur felt a lump form in his throat. He had expected greed. He had expected malice. Instead, he heard a father trying to protect his job, and a son trying to understand a grumpy old man's pain. Arthur watched, mesmerized. But he didn't know yet that this wasn't the worst thing he was about to hear. The real test was just walking through the door. Suddenly, on the video, the door behind Toby flew open. Arthur jumped in his chair. It wasn't Sam. It was Mrs. Higgins, the housekeeper. Mrs. Higgins walked into the frame, her face cold and hard. She didn't scream. She simply reached out and grabbed Toby by the shoulder, her grip tight. "I caught you," she said, her voice sharp like broken glass. "Sneaking around where you don't belong. I knew you people were trouble." "No, I wasn't," Toby stammered, trembling violently. "Don't lie to me," Mrs. Higgins said, pulling him toward the door. "I'm calling Mr. Vance. You're done here." This was the moment from the start of the video. Toby dropped to his knees, clutching his hands together in pure desperation. "No, please," Toby sobbed, looking up at the housekeeper. "Please don't tell Mr. Vance, and please, please don't tell my dad." The boy's face was a mask of terror. He promised we wouldn't be homeless anymore. If you tell, we lose everything. Please." The screen went black as the video clip ended. Arthur sat in the silence of his study. The ice in his glass had melted. He looked at his reflection in the dark monitor. He looked at the phone on his desk. He knew exactly what he had to do. But for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about the cold van, the lonely dog, and the little boy who was terrified of him. Arthur stood up. He didn't pick up the phone. He walked to the door. Arthur pushed his chair back. The leather squeaked loudly in the silent room, a sound that seemed to echo the sudden hollowness in his chest. He looked down at Buster. The old golden retriever was lying by his feet, his chin resting on his paws, looking up with that milky blind eye. For years, Arthur had looked at this dog and seen only a burden, a walking, breathing reminder of the wife he had lost. But now, he looked at the dog and saw a secret keeper. "You knew, didn't you?" Arthur whispered, his voice rough. "You knew he was coming in here." Buster thumped his tail once, a slow, heavy beat against the floor. Arthur felt a wave of shame so hot it made his face flush. He had set a trap to catch a rat, and instead, he ended up capturing an innocent boy. He thought about the sandwich, the peanut butter squashed flat in a napkin. That boy, Toby, probably didn't have much to eat. Sam, his father, was working himself to the bone, likely skipping meals so the kid could have lunch. And what did Toby do? He shared it. He shared it with a dog that belonged to a man who had more money in his couch cushions than Sam made in a month. Arthur walked to the window. Outside, the Seattle sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of rain. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, indifferent and cold. Down the long manicured lawn, near the edge of the woods, the small guest cottage glowed with a warm, yellow light. It looked fragile, like a gust of wind could blow it over. Arthur imagined them in there. He imagined the panic. If Mrs. Higgins had threatened the boy like that, Toby would be terrified. They would be packing. They would be preparing to go back to the van. "The van," Arthur muttered, remembering the rusted heap of metal parked behind the garage. "It's too cold for the van." He didn't grab a coat. He didn't care about the chill in the air. He walked out of his study, past the silent museum-like living room, and out the back door. The evening air bit at his skin. The wind was picking up, rustling the expensive ornamental trees Sam had trimmed so perfectly yesterday. Arthur walked across the damp grass, his expensive Italian loafers soaking up the moisture. He didn't care. His mind was racing. He remembered what Toby had whispered to the photo. Vance is very lonely. His heart hurts. How did a 10-year-old boy see what Arthur's own business partners, his friends, even his own sons couldn't see? Or maybe they did see it, and they just didn't care. Maybe they walked away from the sad giant. But Toby had walked toward him. Arthur reached the door of the guest cottage. He raised his hand to knock, but he stopped. Voices. Raised voices coming from inside. Arthur froze. He knew he shouldn't listen. He had already violated their privacy enough with that camera, but he couldn't move. "I told you." It was Sam's voice. It wasn't angry. It was laced with a frantic, high-pitched panic. "I told you to stay out of the main house, Toby. I told you 1,000 times. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry." Toby was sobbing. "I just wanted to see Buster. He was lonely." "It doesn't matter." Sam sounded like he was on the verge of tears himself. "Mrs. Higgins saw you. She's going to call him Toby. She's going to call Mr. Vance. And do you know what happens then?" There was a silence, broken only by the sound of a zipper, the sound of a suitcase closing. "We have to leave," Sam said, his voice breaking. "Right now, tonight, before he comes down here and calls the police. I can't have the police involved, Toby. If they see the van, if they see how we're living, child services will take you away." Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. Child services. "No, Dad, please," Toby wailed. "I don't want to go. I like it here. I can fix it. I'll tell Mr. Vance I'm sorry." "Rich people don't accept apologies, Toby," Sam snapped, and the bitterness in his voice cut Arthur like a knife. "They accept resignations. Grab your backpack. We're sleeping in the Walmart lot tonight." Arthur couldn't listen to another second. He couldn't let them unzip one more bag. He hammered his fist on the door. Bang, bang, bang. The silence inside the cottage was instant. It was the silence of prey hearing the predator. Arthur waited. He heard a shuffle of feet. The lock clicked. The door opened just a crack. Sam stood there. He looked wrecked. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt half untucked. Behind him, the small living room was in chaos. Clothes piled on the sofa, boxes open. Toby was sitting on the floor, clutching a pillow, his face pale with terror. "Mr. Vance," Sam said. His voice was a whisper. He didn't open the door fully. He tried to block the view of the suitcases with his body. I wasn't expecting you." Arthur looked at this man, this father who was ready to sleep in a freezing car just to keep his son safe. "Mrs. Higgins called me." Arthur lied. He didn't want to mention the camera yet. Sam flinched. He closed his eyes for a second, accepting the blow. "Sir, look, I can explain. The boy, he's just a kid. He didn't steal anything. I swear on my life, Mr. Vance. We are honest people." "He was in my study," Arthur said, his voice deliberately void of emotion. He needed to see how far Sam would go. "I know," Sam pleaded, opening the door a little wider, desperation making him bold. "It's my fault. I should have watched him closer. But please, don't call the police. We'll leave. We're packing right now. Just give us an hour. You won't have to evict us. We'll be gone." Arthur looked over Sam's shoulder. He locked eyes with Toby. The boy was trembling, tears dripping off his chin. He looked exactly like he did on the camera. "Please don't tell my dad." Arthur took a deep breath. He had been a hard man for a long time. He had fired people for incompetence. He had sued people for breach of contract. But looking at these two, he realized that the only contract that had been breached was the one between him and his own humanity. "Stop packing," Arthur said. Sam blinked, confused. "Sir? I said stop packing." Arthur stepped forward, forcing Sam to step back, pushing his way into the small cottage. It was warm inside. It smelled of cheap tomato soup and laundry detergent. It smelled like a home. Arthur stood in the center of the room. He looked at the suitcases. He looked at the half-eaten dinner on the table. "Mrs. Higgins told me she caught a thief," Arthur said, turning to look at Toby. Toby shrank back into the sofa cushions. "But I decided to check my security footage myself," Arthur continued. He reached into his pocket. Sam tensed up, expecting a phone, or a bill, or a termination letter. Instead, Arthur pulled out his handkerchief. He walked over to Toby. The boy flinched, expecting to be hit. Arthur knelt down. His knees popped loudly in the quiet room. He wasn't a young man, and kneeling hurt, but he stayed there. He reached out and gently, very gently, wiped the tear from Toby's cheek. "I saw the footage, Toby," Arthur said softly. "I saw what you did to the picture frame." Toby's eyes went wide. I just dusted it." She looked dusty. "And the dog?" Arthur asked. "I saw that too. He was hungry," Toby whispered. Arthur nodded slowly. He felt a lump in his throat that he couldn't swallow. He turned his head to look at Sam, who was standing by the door, mouth open, completely bewildered. "You're right, Sam," Arthur said, standing up and facing the father. "Rich people usually don't accept apologies." Sam looked down, defeated. But, Arthur's voice cracked, I'm not here as a rich person tonight. I'm here as a man who forgot to feed his own dog. I'm here as a man who hasn't dusted his wife's photo in 6 months because he was too cowardly to look at her face. The room went silent. You're not leaving, Arthur said firmly. Unpack your bags. Sam stared at him. Mr. Vance, I don't understand. You're not firing us. Fire you? Arthur let out a short, dry laugh. Sam, your son is the only person who has treated me like a human being in 3 years. If you leave, who is going to explain to Buster why his best friend is gone? Let me ask you a hard question. If you were in Sam's shoes, broke and desperate, would you still teach your son to be kind to the wealthy man who ignored you? Or would you teach him to be angry? Tell me in the comments. Would you choose kindness or anger? The tension in the room didn't vanish instantly. It melted, slow and thick, like honey. Sam looked at Arthur, searching for the trick, searching for the hidden clause. Mr. Vance, are you sure? Mrs. Higgins said. Mrs. Higgins, Arthur interrupted, his voice hardening just a fraction. Works for me, but she won't be working here tomorrow. I've had my suspicions about her temper for weeks. This just confirmed it. I don't allow people who scare children to enter my home. Toby sat up straighter. You're firing Mrs. Higgins? I'm letting her go, Arthur corrected. There's a difference, just like there's a difference between a house and a home. Arthur looked around the cramped cottage. He saw the peeling paint in the corner. He saw the drafty window covered with a thin blanket to keep the heat in. He felt a deep, gnawing shame. He had let them live like this, while he had 5 empty bedrooms in the main house heating the air for ghosts. Sam, Arthur said, how cold does it get in here at night? Sam rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. It's fine, sir. We have blankets. We're tough. Tough, Arthur repeated. You shouldn't have to be tough. Not here. Arthur reached into his pocket again. This time he pulled out a key ring. It was the master set for the estate. Grab your things, Arthur commanded. Sir, not the clothes, Arthur said, waving his hand dismissively. Just the important stuff. The homework. The toothbrush. The pillows. Where are we going? Toby asked, sliding off the sofa. Arthur looked at the boy. For the first time in years, the millionaire smiled. It wasn't a business smile. It was a real one, small and rusty. The forecast says it's going to freeze tonight, Arthur said, and Buster hates sleeping alone in that big laundry room. He needs a roommate, and I think I need some company for dinner. I hate eating alone. Sam's jaw dropped. Mr. Vance, are you saying? I'm saying the guest cottage is closed for renovations, Arthur lied. You're moving into the East Wing, tonight. The transition from the drafty guest cottage to the East Wing of the Vance estate wasn't just a change of address, it was a change of worlds. For the first few days, Sam and Toby walked through the hallways like they were walking on thin ice. They whispered. They took their shoes off at the door. But Arthur was changing. The man who used to spend his evenings staring at stock market tickers and drinking scotch alone now had a different routine. He started eating dinner in the kitchen with them. Then he started helping with homework. The silence of the house was replaced by the sounds of life. Toby doing his math at the island. The sound of Buster's claws clicking on the floor, faster now because the dog was actually moving, following the boy everywhere. The miracle Arthur had witnessed on the camera wasn't a one-time event. It was Toby's nature. The boy brought weeds from the garden, dandelions and wild daisies, and put them in crystal vases worth thousands of dollars. And Arthur, who used to hire expensive florists, realized the weeds were beautiful. Arthur didn't realize it yet, but rebuilding a home was easier than rebuilding the parts of himself he had neglected for decades. But the true test of this new family came in November, on Arthur's 63rd birthday. Arthur hadn't told anyone it was his birthday. He hated the day. That morning, he received a generic text from his son's assistant. Nothing else. He felt the old, cold darkness creeping back in. He sat in his study, feeling like the poorest man on earth. Around noon, there was a knock. It was Toby. And behind him, Buster. Mr. Vance? Toby peeked in. Dad made pancakes. You didn't come down. Arthur cleared his throat, hiding his emotion. I'm not hungry today, Toby. Dad said today is a special day, Toby said, stepping closer. He revealed a piece of construction paper from behind his back. It was a drawing done in crayons, a tall stick figure with a frown, a smaller stick figure with a smile, and a big yellow dog. At the bottom, in messy handwriting, "Happy birthday to the sad giant, who isn't sad anymore." Arthur stared at the paper. His hands were trembling. "I didn't have money for a present," Toby whispered. "But Dad said the best presents are the ones you make." Arthur looked at the drawing, the sad giant. Arthur realized then that his biological sons knew his bank account, but this boy knew his soul. Arthur fell to his knees and pulled the boy into a hug. It was the first time Arthur had hugged anyone in years. "Thank you," Arthur choked out. "It's the best present I've ever got." That afternoon, Arthur made a phone call to his lawyer. "I need to make some changes to the estate," Arthur said, his voice steady. "And I want to start the paperwork for a trust. Education, housing. I want to ensure the future for a boy named Toby." "Is he a relative, sir?" the lawyer asked. Arthur looked out the window. Sam was in the driveway, teaching Toby how to ride a bicycle. "No," Arthur said. "He's family." 3 years later. The Vance estate was no longer silent. It was the loudest house on the block. Sam was now the estate manager, wearing a suit but still getting his hands dirty in the garden. And Arthur? Arthur stopped working late. He had to be home by 3 p.m. for the school bus. One afternoon, Arthur was sitting on the front porch. A black luxury sedan pulled up. Arthur's eldest son, Mark, stepped out. He looked slick, impatient. Mark walked up the steps. "Dad, good to see you. You look different." "I am different," Arthur said calmly. "Look, I heard rumors you're moving assets around," Mark said, getting straight to the point. "I just want to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." He gestured toward Sam and Toby in the garden. Arthur took a sip of his tea. "They aren't taking advantage of me, Mark. They gave me a reason to wake up." Arthur stood up. He didn't argue about money. He looked at his son, a man who had every advantage in the world but no happiness, and felt a heavy regret. "You're worried about your inheritance," Arthur said softly. "But the only thing of value here is out in the garden." Arthur took a step closer. "And that is my fault." His voice trembled. "I apologize to you, Mark. I'm sorry I didn't dedicate time to you. I see now that I lost so much time away from you, chasing money instead of memories." Mark blinked, stunned. He had come for a fight, not an apology. "I still have hope," Arthur continued. "I hope that one day you'll stop seeing me as a bank account and start seeing me as a father. I'm not going to give up on you, son. But I also won't let you hurt them." He pointed to Sam and Toby. "They saved my life." Arthur walked to the edge of the porch and waved. Toby, now 13, waved back with a bright smile. "I'm leaving you plenty of money, Mark," Arthur said. "But I'm leaving them my heart, because they're the ones who fixed it." Mark stood there. He opened his mouth to argue, but closed it. Something in Arthur's words had unlocked a memory. As he drove away, he didn't turn on the radio. He just thought about his father's words. Now, he could only think about when his next day off from work would be, and maybe he'd stop by his father's house with his daughter. Arthur's story teaches us a simple truth. Sam and Toby lived in a van and had nothing. Yet, Toby felt safer sleeping in that van with his father than Arthur ever felt in his mansion with his millions. Why? Because Sam offered the only security that matters. Love. Arthur learned that a house is built with wood and stone, but a home is built with people. So, don't wait until it's too late to build your home. And if you made it to the end of this story, I want to know. Write the word family in the comments below. Let's show the world that true wealth isn't about what you have in your pocket, but who you have in your heart. Thanks for watching.